last couple of years. What I'm wondering is there any data in your surveys as detailed, as drilled down as is it land acquisitions or land matters that I might be able to get some comparison with what we're finding?
There was some work done, and I can't remember which iteration of Citizens First was, but it looked at the different drivers depending on the types of services. So whether it was just general services from government or whether they were statutory services and different drivers in terms of what was important. But one of the things that we've done in British Columbia in terms of the natural resource sector and the land base is the creation of an entity called Front Counter BC. And what that has done is brought together all of the organizations that make those decisions on the land base. And so if you have an individual who's coming looking to set up a gravel pit business, and they would need different permits and acquisitions from a number of different organizations, whether it's environment or transportation or forestry, and looking at how they can improve that process so that the business owner isn't the one that's running around to all of those different jurisdictions to try and get those approvals, but that it's managed by a case manager, if you will, and they're the ones that go around and do all of that work behind the scenes so that, you know, they may not necessarily get the outcome that they were looking for, but the process is certainly a lot more streamlined than it was, and it's much more timely than it had been in the past, and happy to provide you with some more information on that if you're interested.
Thank you. There's a question down the back here. Thank you.
Yes, Gail Kelly from Inland Revenue New Zealand. Betty Jo, I was interested in, providing good whole-of-government service requires good data sharing across government agencies for that to happen. And it's great to see you valuing the research, but I'm just wondering how much work has been done at looking at what's okay and what's not okay from a citizen perspective about that sharing of information, and indeed what sort of conversations have you had around protecting privacy and those types of things.
So we're very fortunate in British Columbia because our face-to-face offices have actually been in existence for over 150 years. So we have been delivering services on behalf of a number of different program areas, and our staff have access to a number of different services to be able to allow them to access those databases to be able to either join up services or provide multiple services. And so that's just the way that we've done business in British Columbia. Certainly we have things in place like privacy impact assessments that we do to ensure that the information is being used appropriately. There are limitations in terms of what my staff can see to allow them to deliver services that may be only a portion of the system because they don't need to have access to other things. I know in other jurisdictions in Canada that's been a real roadblock because even though we're all public servants and we all take the same oath of office, there are some program areas that feel that if you're not right in their program area, then you couldn't possibly deliver anybody else's services. So the way that we have managed our way through that, frankly, is by doing that prototyping, developing those relationships, providing a little bit of the service so that we can establish the fact that you actually can deliver multiple services through one service delivery agency. And when we show that success, we've been able to expand that service. The other thing that we are doing in British Columbia is the development of an identity management information service. And again, that will provide an ability for every person in the province to authenticate themselves, to go through a process whereby we cite their information so that we know who they are. And then that service will be available to a number of other program areas so that they can, if someone's coming in to get a health service, that they can go to that service and be authenticated. It doesn't give out their health information, but it does say, yes, you are Bette Jo Hughes, and we've proven that. So now you can proceed in terms of allowing that service provider to access your health records if they have an ability to do that. So there's been a huge amount of work developing that identity management framework to ensure that those checks and balances are in place so that only the information that should be shared in order to provide that, that service at the consent of the citizen is available.
Question over
Hi, Betty Jo. My name is Paul. I'm from the Supreme Court of Victoria. By my accent, you'll know that I'm also from Canada. So I'll say two things very quickly. One, I was a little shocked to see that Quebec had fallen off the map. And the other is that even 4 out of 5 services expectations not being met, we Canadians, only 37% of us were still happy with that, or at least not dissatisfied, so we're a tolerant bunch. I want to take my question is, follows on from what you were just talking about. Are there services, government services or statutory authorities or institutions that are not signed up to this? So is the idea that all areas of government service will have access to data, for instance, so the courts, the police, corrections, other hospitals, I guess, those sort of things? Or is it more around the transactional services like Centrelink or Medicare or those sort of things?
It really does vary by program area, by jurisdiction. So in British Columbia, for example, Service BC, we are not mandated. So we deliver the services of organizations that seek our assistance, and we have service delivery agreements with them. But I have to say that over the course of a number of years, poverty breeds partnership. So as all of us have been squeezed in terms of our budget, a lot of the larger program areas who are able to set up their own offices or set up their own systems aren't able to do that anymore because they don't have the money to do it. And so what we have been able to do is, by looking at the breadth of the service that's delivered, is to identify what are those things that we can deliver through our offices in terms of those Tier 1, Tier 2 transactions, and it leaves the resources of those subject matter experts to really focus on the things that they need to do. Courts was a very interesting example, because for years the position of the court registry staff was that unless you were actually in courts, you couldn't possibly take a payment on a court fine or accept documents that would be, later presented as evidence in court. And so again, because they don't have the ability to stand on their own anymore, because they just don't have the budget to do it, we've started to make little inroads in sharing those responsibilities in communities across the province. Now, in terms of the development of systems, there's a huge amount of work that's going on in the justice system in terms of putting together an information system that would support all different types of justice services, and that's I can, again, put you in touch with somebody if you'd like in terms of the development of that system.